Well, welcome to One Horse Town podcast. This is a podcast that has hopes of being able to help pastors and church planters in small towns and rural places. And we are fortunate to have with us as a guest Kent Suits, who is the pastor at Christ Community Church in Leesburg, Batesville, South Carolina. We'll unpack that in a few minutes.
Close.
What?
Batesburg-Leesville
Oh, oh, well, okay. The order. Yeah.
happens to everybody.
Okay. That's good. That's good. Thank you for that correction. But I pulled up your website for the church, and I love that, like, right below the title of your church, it says right across or across from Bojangles. And that tells me something. It tells me where you frequent every morning.
Almost.
Well, yeah. So tell me a little bit about where you are, how long you've been there, how you got there, and all that.
Yeah. So we're in a small town, Batesburg-Leesville. Actually, historically, it was two separate towns, Batesburg and Leesville, on either side, separated a little bit, but joined by a common railroad before the interstate system. It was a Highway 1 traffic, pass through towns, important trade towns. It was actually part of the original Cherokee Trail as well. So
Wow.
just a lot of history here. Also some civil rights history. There was an incident with a guy named Isaac Woodard here in town that was a big Kickstarter and motivation for the civil rights movement. So there's a lot of racial tension history, a lot of different history in town, good and bad. Um, the town joined its municipalities in the 90s. And what I say is they got married and hyphenated the last name. So that's how we got Batesburg-Leesville, all one name hyphenated in the middle. It's small, about 5,600 people within town limits, 10,000 in the radius. And in South Carolina, small southern town. Diversity wise is actually in town limits about 51% Caucasian white and about 48% African American, with a small percentage within town limits of Hispanic population. But then as soon as you get outside the town limits, that Hispanic population spikes. There's a lot of farming communities and things like that. And so there's a lot of Hispanic workers and whatnot to help keep those going. The chicken industry is also big here too. There's a lot of chicken houses, chicken farms, chicken processing plants. The town often throughout the month will have days where the whole town smells like chickens, and not fried chicken, not in a good way, but you get that sometimes too, especially on Sunday afternoon after church lets out and you are across the street from Bojangles, you get the fried chicken smell. So um, that is our town. It's very blue collar. Not for as far as the male population, not a ton of undergrad, college education. A lot of blue collar, a lot of working with hands, mechanics, farmers, things like that. And then, yeah, I mean, economically, lower economic, I guess. Not a booming, growing area. But we are seeing some growth, and they project some growth in the next 5 to 10 years here.
Wow.
So on the map, we're right in between Columbia, South Carolina, and Augusta, Georgia, almost halfway in between on Highway 1, but on the outskirts of town.
I drove through your area a couple weeks ago. Went to the coast, and it routed us that direction.
Yep. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Teeny
Excellent. So
little small
how
town.
long have you been there now?
I've been here 5 years, and actually that's another interesting story. We weren't necessarily targeting this area specifically for a church plant, but a previous congregation, not in the PCA, it was an independent church at the time, but historically had been Methodist. Um, they got down to 8 people, elderly, and they actually donated their entire church property to us, our presbytery, the PCA, to start this church. So where a lot of church plants start with people and no building, we started with an old building and no people. But the Lord's grown it. We're seeing about 50 on average in attendance now, but that's been a slow, up and down process for the last 5 years.
Sure, sure. Was that I mean, in God's providence, it was advantageous, but do you look back and go, wow, that was an advantage to have a building first or a disadvantage or
Yes and no. I mean, definitely some pros and some cons. I mean, the pros are, you save a lot of money on rent and you have space to meet, you have space that you don't have to worry about. Some of the cons is the deferred maintenance, things you do have to take care of that, maybe a church plant wouldn't normally take care of. Also upfitting and things like that. But then also, I think just the mentality, it kind of pushes against the church plant DNA and mentality and culture in some ways, because in town, if you have a church building, you're a church, you're an established church, and coming in without a launch team or anything like that, that's been a constant struggle, is having people understand what is a church plant, what does it mean to be a missional church, because most people assume, you walk into a church building, it's an established church, and a lot of people think it was just a name change. So a lot of people still think we're the previous church, we just changed our name and signs, which isn't the case either. So a lot of clarification, but so yes, pros and cons, but very thankful. It's a great building, sanctuary and education space, as well as a house, a 4-bedroom house that we stay in a couple blocks away. So
fantastic.
yeah.
All right. So when you were going into seminary, thinking through ministry, were you thinking I want to go to blue collar, rural, small town, South Carolina?
No, no, I wasn't thinking, it wasn't on my radar. Started, seminary with the intention of youth ministry, which I did for a while. And then after that, I was in Florida, moving back to South Carolina. I was actually just hoping to be on staff somewhere as an assistant pastor. I was open to the idea of solo pastor. Actually didn't think I would qualify as a church planter. I didn't fit the typical categories that, you might look for in a standard
Hmm.
church, which I'm sure we'll get to. But
Yeah, good.
so it wasn't on my radar, even a church plant. And when this topic came up, when I came out to South Carolina, I was looking for opportunities to fill pulpits and looking for jobs still. And I was told about this project and how there was a congregation still of 8 people there in this small town, and they needed people to go fill the pulpit. First time I ever preached to 8 people. But I went, I did that. I met with our local church plant coordinator at the time, Kevin Thumpston, and met with him afterwards. He said, how did it go? What'd you think? I said, yeah, it was great. Sweet, sweet group of people. And he said, yeah, we're actually looking for someone to plant a church there. And I said, wow, that's great. I hope you find your guy. So, I mean, wasn't even on my radar, wasn't looking for it, but the Lord had many steps that lined up, open doors, closed doors, and he made it very clear this is where we were going to be. And to the point where it would have felt like disobedience not to come. So that was a good sign.
Was it so you're married and have kids?
Yes. Yes.
Was it as clear to your wife that that was where you were supposed to be?
By the time all of those closed open doors happened, yes, we both kind of had a settled, doesn't mean the whole process has been smooth and easy. There's been
Sure.
challenges along the way, but yes, along the way, and especially leading up to it, it became very clear for both of us, like, wow, this is really, this is where the Lord's putting us. So, and the personality, I would say the personality of the town really fits us as
Hmm.
individuals. We're both pretty easygoing, kind of slow going. We don't have this high elaborate standard of living. We're pretty chill as a couple and as a family, and the small town vibe really fits both of us really well. So we love living here, we love being here, we love the culture. So yes.
That's excellent. That's excellent. What would have been some of the challenges for you and your family being in a small town? What have been some of the, I'll say challenges first, and then I'll ask follow up with the benefits.
Okay, yeah, challenges are, I mean, opportunities, things, being a small church, not having the ministry opportunities and all that for your wife, women's ministry, things for her to get plugged into, for your kids, nursery and childcare and children's, Sunday school and things like that. We were the only family and the only kids starting out, and we've had ups and downs there to the point where our kids are almost without friends even now in our church. So there's just a lot of challenges there for the family as far as relationships and ministry opportunities, and also practical things like shopping and stuff like that. We have a Walmart, but we don't have Aldi, or Lidl, or things like that, parks and zoo and playground. So, they make some drives to do those types of things, those fun activities, go to the zoo, in Columbia, things like that. But, as far as in town, there are some limits there.
Right, right. What about benefits? What have you seen, or has your family expressed some benefit? What do you see as benefits, and what does your family express as benefits?
Yeah, I mean, benefits, I would say, on the other side of that, being in a small church, there's a lot of love for our family. There's a lot of people within the church who really pour into them, who love our kids well, who are our friends in the church. In town, that slow pace of life, you get to know people, and you are known by people in town, which is a good thing. That also can be a challenge sometimes, but
Right.
um, being able to, like, this past spring, we're finishing up softball season, and two of my daughters have been playing softball. I've been helping coach one of their teams, and it's just a great way to meet people as well, and they've made friendships there. So, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so when you first got there, you land, you've got 8 people. Where did you start? I mean, how did you begin to just land in a community and get to know people?
I kind of came in. I talk about how you have to start slow, but in some ways, I came in and I plugged into whatever I could find. I wanted to be the town chaplain, so almost that parish ministry type of approach. So I connected with the police department. I connected with the local schools, and specifically the local football team. Football is really big in our town. So the coach at the time and now the new coach have been very welcoming, and I serve as the high school football chaplain. Um, that's also given me opportunities to plug in other areas, get to know principals, get to know school district leaders. Our school district is its own district as well, so that allows for a lot of connectivity. Plugged into the local town council. I pray almost every month at the local town council meetings. I'm not on town council, but again, trying to serve as a local town chaplain in a way. So I looked for ways to plug in early on, to build relationships, to meet with business leaders, to meet people in town, go visit restaurants, go visit businesses, and introduce myself. So, and then find those areas where I could see myself serving and helping regularly. That's scaled back at this point to where now I still pray at town council, and I still serve on the football team as chaplain, but I'm not doing as much, even though I still have those relationships with the police department, fire department, things like that.
Right. Do you find that now that are you a particularized church? Are you an organized church in the PCA?
Nah, we're still mission status. So the big thing holding us back is our own indigenous leadership. So elders, deacons, as well as getting our numbers and finances to a point where we would be self-sustaining. So we're still mission status.
Right, right. Your mission status, but at some level too, you still have the full responsibility of a full-time pastor of a church. Um, how has that transition been from going to meeting people in the community, being out there? Because you said some things have changed a little bit. How has that transition been to now preaching every Sunday and dealing with all the stuff you have to deal with within the church? Has that been positive, hard? Do you miss stuff in the beginning?
Yes, yes to all the above. So that's honestly, just to be honest with you, Corey, and whoever's listening, I'm still trying to figure that out. What the balance is, what that looks like, not wanting to give up, the full-time planting aspect, but starting to recognize, we have real pastoral needs. There's even some discipline needs now, discipline situation and accountability and follow up. And so shepherding, training elders and deacons, I mean, all those things that need to happen for us to particularize, as well as we do have a generationally diverse church. So we have a couple of infants, newborn babies, and we have a couple in their 80s, mid 80s. So there's also the generational discipleship and visiting and pastoring in that way, meeting the needs of your people. So that's still something I'm trying to figure out, identify weaknesses, grow in those areas of pastoral ability and leadership. And so, yes, I don't know if that answers your question, but yes.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's interesting to hear. Just I'm in a different role than you are, because I don't have a church that I'm pastoring. I sort of do now, but that's um, but I found that I was at one point I was pastoring a larger church, and I felt like I lost the ability because of church stuff, relationships, and that I lost the ability to be in the community and meeting the community at some level, and I always felt that tension between the two. So it's interesting to hear that
Yeah.
happens at a small town level. Also, it's not just a larger community.
You also have to know yourself. So it's easy to burn out. It's easy to get tired after pouring in for 2 years into the community. And there's a part of you, whether you're introverted or extroverted, there's a part of you that kind of wants to hide sometimes, and hide in your office and study and read. And you still have to tell yourself, no, you gotta get out there. You gotta be with the people. You gotta serve, not just here but out there, not just out there but also in here. And knowing yourself, knowing your weaknesses, so that you can balance that. And I say that to myself because I'm still trying to figure that out.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah, even in the context I'm in where I've got plenty of space to go meet people, it's hard to get out of the house and on the road and go meet new
Yeah.
people.
Yep.
Um, what was the question I was going to ask? There's a follow-up question to that. Well, I'll ask another one. What are some of the unique things that you think are unique about um uh Batesville, Leesburg? Did I get that
Batesburg,
right?
Leesville. You're getting the endings wrong.
I
Batesburg,
am, yeah.
Leesville. I know.
All right, all right, all right. So what are some what
Well,
are
one unique thing is our name. So
I'm just gonna start I'm gonna start making up names now.
it's all right.
What are some things that are unique to your town?
Yeah, sure. To our town or to small town ministry?
Your town in particular.
Your
Yeah.
town in particular, yeah. The name. We are I guess one thing is we're a chicken town. So, like I said, lots of chicken houses, chicken plants, chicken restaurants. We just had our annual, what they call the Poultry Festival, which has become a pretty big day, a pretty big deal in our state. It's pretty widely attended, from people all over the state come. It's recognized
Wow.
as a state festival now, which started, several years ago as just a local town festival on the Leesville side. But the town's really taken ownership of that. And so that's kind of a fun thing to go to be a part of. But the other thing about our town, I don't know if this is true for other towns, is the community aspect. As far as the town itself really wants to build the community, and they do a lot of local events throughout the year. So there is the Poultry Festival, but there's also a Falls Festival. There's a Thanksgiving event. There's summer movie nights. There's a Christmas parade, all kinds of things throughout the year. Halloween on Main. Um, that as a church plant has actually been pretty convenient just to show up at those, set up a table, set up a booth, go to those, the town Easter egg hunt. We were a part of that for the last few years. So there's these monthly almost activities that the town hosts, the town coordinates, the town promotes, and then as a church, we just show up. It's kind of this mentality of, instead of come to us, come to our events, we try to go to them, go to the town. And those things are much better attended than anything if we hosted it ourselves, our own Easter egg hunt, our own fall festival. And so we just go to those, we set up a table, set up a booth. We've got a photo booth. Sometimes we have games. We pass out free drinks, and church material, and just try to have conversations with people. So those are, the community event aspect, I guess, might be unique to us. But also just the history, and that's going to be there a lot in a lot of small towns as well. But the history, the civil rights history, the diversity, it really is pretty racially diverse.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Which it brings up, you have, is it Shanez?
Yep. Yep.
African American worship leader for your church.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and it seems unusual that in small town South Carolina you could have a racially diverse church, small church.
Yeah. And
What is that? Tell me about that.
that's been a challenge, and we see a little bit of that. But if you were to come on a Sunday morning, you'd see all of us and Shanez. I mean, that's typically what it is. But we've been very intentional about trying to reach the whole community, not just so we can say, look at us, we're a multicultural, racially diverse church, but to say, hey, half of our community is African American, and for us not to try to reach them with the gospel would be neglecting half of our town. And so, the Lord has called us to make disciples of all nations, and we've got two predominant ethnicity groups right here in our town. So we feel like it's our call to this town to reach all the people of the town. So we do try to do that, diversify our worship, our style of worship, the music that we do, leadership, things like that. But all of that is with an eye for the kingdom coming to all people, the gospel going to all nations. And Shanez has really caught that vision and been very sacrificial in that, leaving his culture to come to us, but trying to patiently introduce us to his culture and music and things as well. But he's just an excellent man too. I mean, young man, he's only 21 years old, but extremely talented, entrepreneurial, and in school to finish college, but considering full-time ministry as well. So just an awesome guy. Yeah, love working with him. He's become probably my best friend in town, just working together with him, and so that's fun.
That's neat. It's very good. Do you find that you're still getting visitors coming to the church?
We do, yes, and actually we've had a pretty good spike the last couple of months of people coming, and some coming back and returning. We get waves, I guess. I don't know if it's word of mouth or if it's just trends of church attendance, but we got a wave of visitors during and after COVID because a lot of churches in town were shut down. So we had a lot of people visiting during that time, and some stayed. But it just seems almost seasonal that you get kind of these waves of visitors, some staying. So yes, we are still regularly seeing guests come in either on invite or just by seeing our building, seeing our sign, looking us up online, whatever.
How has it been? Are you the only Presbyterian church in the town?
There's a PCUSA, but it's very lightly attended from what I understand.
Yeah.
They don't have a permanent pastor there. I think there's a supply pastor and interim type situations, but so the word Presbyterian is also kind of unknown to people.
Right.
We don't, our name Christ Community Church that was intentional, not to just throw it out there, because almost anybody that doesn't grow up Presbyterian thinks you can't step into a Presbyterian church in a small town. There's a lot of loyalty in a small town as far as what church you grew up in, what denomination you grew up in, things like that. So, but we don't not ashamed of it. We have PCA at the bottom of our sign, so we're not hiding it necessarily, but it's subtle. But yeah, so that's usually a point of information too. The way I summarize that is, the PCA, we are faithful to scriptures, true to the Reformed faith, obedient to the Great Commission. If I go out and I have that conversation with people, that might go over people's heads. And so I'd get that question a lot. Are you a part of a denomination? The way I usually answer that is yes, we are part of a denomination. We actually started in 1973. We came out of a previous denomination that had veered away from teaching what the Bible teaches about, Jesus, the virgin birth, the necessity of his death on the cross to cover sin, the atonement, things like that. And so because they had veered away from scripture, a group left and started a new denomination that had three core values: that we believe the Bible, we believe in the grace of God, and we believe in telling people about Jesus. And that's how I'd summarize: faithful to scriptures, we believe the Bible; true to the Reformed faith, the doctrines of grace, we believe in the grace of God; and obedient to the Great Commission, we believe in telling people about Jesus. So that's kind of how I have that conversation. And then after that, if they're Baptist, Methodist, whatever, sometimes they'll say, "Oh yeah, I believe that too." And then I'll be able to say, "Well, we're actually part of the PCA, stands for Presbyterian Church of America. We came out of the PCUSA, which we believe has left the teachings of Scripture." And the word Presbyterian just means elder. We believe in having elders lead, and it's not just the pastor running the show. There's accountability, and so that's what it means to be Presbyterian. That's kind of how it's summarized and have that conversation. It seems to help and kind
Sure.
of soften the blow for people.
Sure. Sure. Let's see here. I'm watching my time. Yeah. Okay, so which brings up the question of why another church? It sounds like there's some Baptist churches, Methodist churches, another Presbyterian church. Why another church in another small town?
Yeah, yeah. Well, because there's people here who don't know Christ. That's the main thing. Is there are a lot of people who don't know Jesus still in our town. There are people here that God will save and has saved through our ministry. Just 2 Sundays ago, we were able to baptize 2 adults who were not churched, were not in a church context, and who have said they probably would have never walked into a church if it wasn't for us. So they are why we are here. One of our elders said, if we do nothing else as a church plant, we have been successful because of these two. And so, that we're here for them, but we're here for others that the Lord will bring. And we're here for a lot of people who have been in unhealthy churches. A lot of these churches, I want to be careful, but a lot of these churches really are not healthy in the sense that they're not preaching the gospel. They're not talking about Jesus. They're preaching moralism. They're not believing the Bible. A lot of them really, even some of the Southern Baptist Church, they really aren't teaching the Bible. They aren't preaching the truths of Scripture. There's a lot of politics. There's a lot of family power structures in these churches. And so we're trying to be a church that has genuine fellowship and community, that's really about the Bible, really about preaching Jesus, really about seeing the lost saved and people grow in their faith, grow in the grace of God for sinners. So
It's good. It seems like small towns tend to get the least of resources, including theological. And I sort of see myself here as realizing how much of exactly what you're talking about, that just the lack of a broader, deeper picture of what the scriptures teach about the gospel that's just lacking, that is so needed in small towns. Because I think we dismiss small towns. We think, why do we need to go there? But there's a deep, deep need in the small towns. Okay, so if somebody, again, just time wise, if somebody is thinking through planting, pastoring in a small town, what kind of characteristics would you look for if you were interviewing somebody? What kind of characteristics would you look for in a potential pastor?
Yeah. So I appreciate the question, and knowing this was going to happen, the wheels started turning. I started getting my thoughts organized. So I have actually a list of 7 S's. It just worked out that way. I'm a pastor, so you get the alliteration there. So I would say the first is that they be saved and sanctified. Seems like a given, but they really need to believe the gospel, and they need to be walking in repentance, faith, pursuit of holiness, that shows up and is clear in their relationships, in their marriage, in their parenting, and all those things. So saved and sanctified. The second is that they're slow, and in slow I mean they're patient. It's going to be a slow process. It's going to be ordinary, repetitious. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be moments where you get really discouraged by not seeing the fruit, not seeing what you want to see. So being patient, having that slow, easygoing, patient personality, I would say is important. Not coming in like a lot of church planters with that entrepreneurial, go get them, agenda focused, prospectus type, personality, but really coming in soft and settling in, being there for the long haul. uh,
Mm.
not come and go mentality. Not seeing this as a ladder to the next big thing. Third is a self-starter, so able to just start things from scratch, ministries, events, event planning, being your own accountability person, making sure you're doing what you need to be doing as a pastor and church planter. Fourth is simple. By simple, I mean simplicity in your lifestyle, not feeling this big need to have an elaborate lifestyle to be able to do all the things that maybe you think a church planter should be able to do. Your small town might not have a hip coffee bar or a cool brewery or nice restaurants or a nice steakhouse or a nice place to have a date, or your budget might not allow you to have the nicest clothes and all those things, drive the nicest car. So
Electric car.
was that
An electric car.
electric car? Yeah.
I
So
find being here, if I had an electric car, that would not be good for my ministry.
diesel and smoke.
That's right.
Simple lifestyle, simple ministry, simple teaching, simple preaching, simple discipleship, mentor apprenticeship type of approach rather than books and classroom type approach. So simplicity,
Good.
small, be prepared to be small. That's number 5. Small numbers, small budget, small attendance, small staff, small volunteer base, small sessions, small diaconate. So it's small town, so expect it to be small building, small worship. So uh, number 6 is selfless. So to be someone who is humble, who's willing to serve and do whatever it takes to be the nursery coordinator, children's coordinator, youth director, senior pastor, assistant pastor for visitation, discipleship pastor, outreach pastor, to be willing to the janitor, social media person, whatever, be prepared. You might have some good volunteer base, but be prepared if you don't, if you don't have that availability of volunteers and workforce. And then the last is to be satisfied, to be content with whatever the results are. That fulfill your ministry. I just finished preaching through 1st and 2nd Timothy. Fulfill your ministry, work within your pay grade, do your job, be faithful to what the Lord has called you to, and leave the results up to Him and be satisfied with what the results are. That's hard. I mean, I say that, but that's hard to be satisfied with the results when you don't see the growth, you don't see the conversions, you don't see the fruit that you want to see, you don't see the repentance in people's lives that you hope to see. You don't see the leadership structures that you want to see. So to make sure you're doing what the Lord has called you to, but then work within your pay grade. Don't try to do the work of the Holy Spirit. Just do your job and leave the results to the Lord.
It
So
doesn't that really go back to the very first one of being saved and sanctified, is that
yeah,
you've got to rest in what the Lord is doing, and that's, I mean, that's sanctification. That's tough.
yep, yep.
Yep. That's tough everywhere for sure.
And
It's
I can,
interesting
if you
there.
want to put those 7 S's in your notes or whatever, I can send those to you.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah, that'd be fantastic. I love that you added to them. That's great from what you sent to me. Um, And, as you're talking through that, I was thinking, a young pastor, I do, a small town is a great place to go. It's a great place to be, but also, hearing that, the sacrificial aspect of it, and having to think small, and you might have to print the bulletin yourself, and that also is a positive thing for experienced pastors who've had to do ministry before, and to be able to minister well to people, in those relationships. Yeah, I know we've talked before about just some of the dangers in a small town is being careful what you say, um, being for the town, not against the town, and it's easy to say something or misstep, and word spreads quickly.
Yeah.
Uh, but
And
there's
that
also benefit to that.
right, there's pros and cons. So I mean, in a way, pastor in a small town is like a little mini celebrity. I mean, people know who you are, especially if you're getting in the community. People will know who you are. I find that people, say hey to me, say hey, pastor, frequently that I've never met before. I don't know who they are, don't know their name, but
That's
so yeah,
fantastic.
it's pros and cons.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, Ken, I think we're like 30 seconds out of time. So we'll wrap up here, but I really, really appreciate you doing this. And,
Thanks for having
I'll
me.
share with you the recording, and we'll see how it goes.
Perfect. Thanks, man.
All
Looking
right.
forward to
Thank you.
hearing it from others.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
Hey, brother.